Hey guys, it's Lady Raven. Sorry, my hair is a mess. And as you can see today, we're blending and I made a big mess on my shirt. So I apologize for that in advance. But so anyway, so welcome to The Witch is In. And today, one of the things we're going to be talking about is the magic of flowers, which is how can you incorporate flowers into your practice and still have it be something that's different and unique and not using flowers in the traditional ways that we normally use flowers. So let's talk about that. So let's look at what a flower's purpose is in the plant, right? So the flower serves a reproductive purpose. That's where the seeds are going to be for the next generation. The flower is going to be attracting birds and pollination and all of that. So this is why often flowers are associated with love and with fertility and with sex and all of that, because that is literally what it does for the plant. So that is kind of just the broad strokes of what it is that flowers do. And then if you want to know what each flower does, you can kind of start looking at the characteristics of that flower. You know, what color is it? What is its behavior? How does it bloom? Where does it bloom? When does it bloom? So all of those things are also going to be a factor. One of the books I want to share with you guys that I really, really love is this book right here. It is called The Magick of Flowers by Tess Whitehurst. Sorry, I can't read backwards. I have this book at home. It's an awesome, awesome, awesome reference book that goes deep into what the flowers do. And then she talks about the traditional meanings of the flowers. And then she also talks about kind of more modern meanings that are based on, you know, the doctrine of signatures and based on what flowers actually, what their behavior is when they're in the plant. So this is a great book to have as a reference at home. So the flower plant itself, the actual flower has its own energy. But then there are other things that you can also, that will also enhance that energy for you. So for example, every time my husband gives me flowers, gives me roses or anything like that, after I enjoy them and they're kind of get ready to go down, I will take the petals out and dry them. Because now that flower is going to carry two meanings, right? It's going to carry, number one is the meaning of that roses normally have. This, you know, roses are all about, you know, love and connection and all of that. And then on the top of that, since it was given to me with the intent of love and romance from my husband to me, then that means that that intent is also going to carry through on that plant. So flowers that were given to you by family members, by friends, by anybody really, once those flowers, if you can dry those petals and save them, they really have really, really powerful magic that you can use. So for example, I have the petals at home divided into like pink, white, and red. I have a lot of white because that's my favorite. I also have some flowers that were given to me as a birthday gift by some friends, some yellow roses. And so I have some yellow ones also that I dried and I used it for friendship magic, for sachets, for when I'm trying to kind of ingratiate myself with somebody or trying to make a good first impression with somebody. That is kind of one of the things that you can use. When I'm trying to feel more confident, I will use that because once again, it was given to me as a birthday gift and it's yellow. So it touches all of the boxes you need to boost confidence and things like that. So how you acquire the flowers, a lot of times will play a big role on the energy that you can extract from that. There is flowers that are given to you with a particular intent are extremely powerful. So don't toss them, save them, and you'll be able to use them over and over and over again. Hi, clinker. No, we are not talking about flower essences. I'm talking about flowers themselves that you would use in spell casting and any kind of magic that you are trying to use them for. So that's basically what that is. Flower essences are something completely different, and they are going to be excellent for like if you have they really work well for like mood disorders and things like that. But that's a whole separate ball of wax. let's see, I use gifted flowers for my own loose incense. That is a great way to use it. So somebody gives you some flowers, you dry them, and you can use them. But remember, the flowers, the minute that it's gifted to you by somebody, there's going to follow a lot of the intent that you have is going to be boosted by the intent that it was given to you. So make sure that you label them, because I, in the beginning, used to just put all of them that were given to me in one container. And then after a while, I was like, wait a minute, but some of these were in good circumstances and some of those were as an apology for fuckery. So excuse me for the language, an apology for somebody who did something they weren't supposed to do to me. So I said, oh, this is better because it's going to be two separate intents. So it was better if you would kind of spread those out and have them separate, because then you can use them for two different things. So that is some of the ways that you can use flowers and flower petals in your practice when they were given to you by somebody. Another thing that you can do with flowers, let's say you buy flowers at the grocery. Who else is a flower plant rescuer? I am. Go to the grocery store, see a plant that's half dead, and I want to rescue it, right? So the other thing is, whenever I rescue a plant like that and I get a bloom out of it, the very first bloom, I will clip it and I will dry it, because what that means is I took something that was almost dead and brought it back to life. So it's that whole kind of rejuvenation. It's going to be great for healing. It's going to be great for transformation, for transitioning, making big life changes, things like that. That plant, that flower that almost died and you were able to recuperate it is going to be very, very helpful in that. Another flower that I want to talk about is the Rose of Jericho. And essentially what it is a flower that when you first look at it, it's very, very dry. And it's like, it kind of looks like a dry tumbleweed is what it means. In the nicer months, I forage flowers outside. That's the way to do it too. I do that as well. We have a mountain cabin. I go up there and I get a lot of like forsythia, and we get some mountain laurels, all kinds of things up there. So, but anyway, the Rose of Jericho is another one, right? So Rose of Jericho, the way that it works is it basically closes it once it's not having water or nutrition or anything like that. What it will do is it's going to close it up and it's going to dry, and it's just basically going to look like a tumbleweed about that big. So when you get one, it looks completely dead. And you just take it home and you stick it in a bowl of water, and then that flower is going to start coming back to life. And this flower can do this multiple times before it stops doing it. But one of the things that I like doing with that is putting it in, and you can use the water from that flower. So that water that brought the plant back to life is the part that you're going to use. You're not going to use the actual Rose of Jericho. You don't want to use that. You want to use the water that was used to bring that plant back to life. So once the plant comes back and the flower comes back and it opens up and it blooms and it looks beautiful, then at that moment, you can go ahead and take the water out. And what I do is I like to add some really strong alcohol in it. Generally, it's going to be either vodka or you're going to use also, I try not to use brandy, but you can use vodka, you can do Everclear, you can do any kind of really strong alcohol. And you put about 30% to 40% of alcohol in a jar, and then you fill that rest of that jar with your Jericho water. And then you have an ingredient that you can basically use anytime that you are looking to do any kind of work that's going to be bringing things back to life. So if you have a project that's half dead, you need to revive it. If you have a relationship that's dead that you want to revive. So it really becomes a very powerful elixir for you to use to bring things back after they've kind of supposedly died. So we got lots of comments today. Let me see. Do you need to go? What kind of flower is it? Do you need to go? What kind of flower is it to work with it? I'm not sure I understand your question, Clinker. Let's see, Paula, what a wonderful gift. Grow them with intent and gift them with intention. Exactly. You can do that too. And then you can, a lot of times what you can do, if you're planning to gift that to somebody for intention, you can bring it home first. You can put your intention in it, and you can put, once you get ready to give it to them, you take that water that sustained that flower, time, you repeat the same thing you did with the Rose of Jericho. You can take that water, you can put it in a container, you can add some alcohol to it to keep bacteria from forming. And then you can use that anytime you're in need of gratitude, anytime that you need to be giving things to people. You can use that water to really boost your magic and your work that you're doing. Um, let's see. Ooh, I like this idea of using the water. Yeah, you can really use the water of each flower that you're working with for many different things. But keep in mind, it's very, first of all, you're not going to drink it ever. Don't ever drink that water. And then second, keep in mind that it is, you're going to have to add alcohol every single time, because bacteria and mold and all kinds of things will want to grow in that water because it's got a lot of biological material. So make sure you're always putting in some kind of a preservative. Sorry, typo. Do you need to know what kind of flower it is to work with it? Yes, because you don't want to work with a stranger, right? So you need to know what it is that you're working with. You need to, I would say, anytime you work with flower or an herb or anything, make sure it's something that you've established a relationship with it before. You don't want to be in a situation where you're using it for the first time for a brand new spell and you've never used it. You don't know how it's going to work. At that point, it doesn't matter what intent is going to be on top of that flower, right? Because you've never worked with it. You don't have an established relationship with that flower. So you can't really take advantage of the rest of that energy. So always make sure that these are flowers that you are familiar with. If someone gifts you a flower and you dry it because you want to use it later, before you use it, go get to know that flower. Go do a ceremony to connect with that flower, with the energy of that flower, so that when you get ready to use that very special ingredient, you kind of already know what it is that you're working with. You know what energy the flower has, and then you know the intent that the person gave it to you with. I hope that makes sense. Let's see. When foraging, sometimes I can't identify what it is. Okay, so there's a lot of apps out there that you can use. My favorite one is called Plant In. And it's, I think you pay like, I think $20 a year or something like that. It's not expensive. But you take pictures of it and it'll tell you what that flower is. You always want to double check it, make sure that you are accurate with when you're doing that. If you are not going to consume that flower, then you're okay. But keep in mind that some flowers can be very toxic just by touching them. So for example, foxglove. I have a beautiful foxglove in my front porch right now, and it's got those beautiful flowers that look kind of almost like bluebells, little kind of little bells hanging down. What's going to happen with that is going to be very dangerous. It's going to affect your heart. So anybody who's got heart problems, you don't even want to touch it. If you touch it, you want to make sure that you touch it with gloves. When I first brought that home and I trimmed it and I clipped it and I got it ready to go, after I finished, because idiot me, didn't put any gloves on, I got fast heartbeat and I didn't know what the hell. It felt like my heart was going to beat out of my chest. And it's because of the plant. So keep in mind that those plants can be very, very dangerous. Some of the more poisonous plants. So if you are working with them and you don't know exactly what it is, you want to make sure you use gloves. You want to make sure you research it before you start using it. So if somebody gifted you a plant, a flower, if you don't know what that flower does and it was gifted to you, the fact that it was gifted, that intent that followed the gift is going to combine with the energy that the flower already has. So if you have a gifted flower, but not a gifted flower for you, but the flower itself is poisonous and dangerous and it's going to kill you, doesn't matter that it was gifted to you, right? Because unless you want to gift death to somebody else or poison to somebody else or anything like that, that's what that flower is going to bring. So those flowers like that would be better for when you're trying to give curses or lift curses. Actually, it's excellent for lifting curses from people. So that is one of the things that you can do with it. Sorry about that. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. Apparently there's people in the front. There's a child that's screaming. So apologize for that. But anyway, so just be careful when you're working with it to make sure that you really, really know what it is that you're working with. You're going to see that a lot of flowers are going to be ruled by both Venus and water. And keep in mind, this Venus makes perfect sense, right? Because this is what a flower does. It's going to look around and go, hey, look at me, pay attention to me, come over here, come hang out with me and all that. And God, this thing is really driving me crazy. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you open up oils and you don't pay attention to where they're going, and they just kind of go everywhere. So a lot of them are going to be combined with Venus, because Venus is all about that attraction. And that is what flowers basically do for the plant. So it's important to understand that and to work with that. So I have a few flowers here that I pulled. I actually pulled some information directly out of this book that I wanted to kind of really quickly go over with you guys, so that if you have any of these are some of the more common ones. These are some that you can start working with right now if you want to. So number one, orchids. So keep in mind, where does an orchid come from, right? An orchid is a tropical plant. It can't have a lot of water in it. It can't have, you can kill it by overwatering, which, if you think about that, how does that translate into the water element relationship with that plant, right? It's a very tenuous relationship. It's very balanced. If you have too much water, it dies. If you don't have enough water, it dies. So you have to be very careful of how it is that you do that. So when you have a plant like that that really doesn't like water, what you're looking at is something that's going to not be focused so much on your emotional body. It's going to be something that's more about appearances. So if you look at the look of an orchid is very elegant. It's kind of like, the blooms last a really long time. It's very attractive. It tends to kind of call the attention of a room. It comes in beautiful, vibrant colors. So all of those things are going to factor in to what an orchid is going to do for you. So beauty, elegance, uniqueness, eroticism, romance, all of those things are going to be associated with orchid. Notice I didn't say love, right? Because that is not what it is. Because think about the water relationship that orchid has. So keep that in mind when you move forward with it. And it is Venus water. So what I do with that is, when I have orchids at home and they drop off the plant after they've had their lives and they come down, I save those, and then I use them later for different spells and different magic, even though they're kind of, at that point, they pretty much died, but it's still the flower, and it still came from that plant, and it still got to live its full life before I take it back with me. So I know a lot of times they say, for the best looking flowers and for the best medicinal flowers, you want to make sure that you trim them and you get them as soon as they're at their brightest, because then they have the most nutrients and all of that. But when we're working with it in plant spirit medicine, when you are working with the spirit and the essence of the flower, not necessarily the chemical properties of the flower, it doesn't matter. And you can take a flower that's kind of dried up and use that in its place, and it's still going to have all the same properties, because the properties do exist within that particular flower. The second one, roses, right? So think about roses. Let's look at roses and see what they do. So you look at roses, they're beautiful big bushes. They attract a lot of things. Roses are finicky. They're difficult to take care of. They also have a lot of thorns. So what are you looking at? You're looking at something that's going to be very attractive. You're looking at something that is a symbol of love, right? Because it's something that needs to be nurtured and cared for in a very special way, in order for you to be able to have a rose bush that is going to do really well. I have two of them at home, and let me tell you, it takes 80% of my plant effort is taking care of those two darn rose bushes. And then what else does it have? It's got those thorns for protection, right? So this is going to be a big, big, big one for protection in relationships. If you're trying to protect your marriage from something, trying to protect your relationship from something, it's going to be really good for that. If you're trying to protect your heart, it's also going to be great for healing, because it is one of those plants that, even though it can fail if you have, it can get diseases, it can get all of those things, but it's really difficult to kill a rose, right? Normally it may look a little shabby and it may still kind of be going, but it's not necessarily going to, it has to have a lot of neglect for it to pretty much die outright. And so that's another thing, so that it is a healing flower. It's a flower that always comes back. No matter what happens to it, it's always going to try to come back. So when you're looking at roses, you're looking at abundance. Rose bushes normally give many different roses, and they grow pretty darn fast. So you're looking about abundance, beauty, emotional healing, cleansing and blessing. Roses can be used for protection, purification, and once again, Venus water. So it's going to be a little bit more deeper in terms of what it does, instead of the orchid, right? It's going to be a little bit more emotional than the orchid is, because water is not necessarily a killer for it. So it's going to be, if you're looking to heal the heart, you don't want to use orchids, you want to use roses. Another one that we're going to talk about is pansy. And pansy for me is interesting because it talks about, what we talked about with rebirth, right? We talked about the Rose of Jericho. And that happens when the flower dies and then the flower comes back, right? So that's that rebirth of the flower that's happening. So pansies kind of have the same thing because they're an annual. So they die every year and then they come back every year. Plus pansies, they're very unassuming flower. So it's a very great flower for you to use for any kind of work that is like reaffirming who you are, not your ego, but your power of who you are, showing to the world, this is me. And I'm very proud of myself exactly the way that I am. So that is one of the great things that pansy can do for you when you're working with that kind of energy. Pansy can also be a stress reliever. It can bring clarity. It's a gentleness because it is a very gentle flower. Ideas, love, parody, self-exploration, and it's, once again, it is Venus water. So when you can sometimes tell what the flower is going to be about by how the plant behaves and when the flowers come out. So for example, a magnolia flower, I did not know this because we had to replant a magnolia tree. We moved it from one side of the yard to the other side of the yard, and it did not bloom the first year that we moved it because the blooms have to prepare and set themselves a whole season before its blooming season. So if it's going to bloom in the spring, those flowers and buds have to set in the fall so that it is going to basically have time to mature and then bloom in the spring. So that is also, so think about what does that say? This is somebody who is looking for something very specific. So if you can use magnolia if you're looking for what? For a soulmate. If you're looking for a long haul, a person who's going to be there with you in the long run, because it's going to require all that planning, all that nurturing to bring it to fruition. So magnolia, if you just got married and you want to have flowers to represent your marriage, right? To say, I want to make sure that every year we're working towards making this happen. Magnolia is a fantastic flower for that. And I just went off tangent. Sorry about that. The other one that I made a note of to speak to you about is jasmine. Especially one of my favorites is when you find night blooming jasmine, because any flower that's going to bloom at night is going to deal with a lot of hidden things. So these flowers are going to be dealing with hidden, like if you don't know if your partner's cheating or not, and you want to figure it out, night blooming flower may be one of the things you can use to be able to bring that energy in and say, hey, I want to know what goes on at night. I want to know what's happening. If you are looking for a hot Saturday night date, if you're looking for just that, not a relationship, but just hot Saturday night date, then your flowers are going to be, night blooming flowers are going to be fantastic for that. If you have, let's say your marriage is fizzled out a little bit, you're still great friends, but the bedroom is not that great, night blooming flowers, once again. So even though jasmine, some of them are night blooming and some of them are not, they're still in that family and they do carry some of that energy in with them. Right. So jasmine is going to be, and even the smell of, and ironically, this is jasmine oil that I poured all over myself for today. But jasmine is going to bring what? It's going to bring abundance. Think of, if you ever seen a jasmine bush or vine bloom, it is a bazillion flowers. It's not like roses or magnolias where they have one big, beautiful flower. So it's a bunch of tiny little flowers that come at the same time. So when you have flowers like that, they tend to be really good for abundance and fertility. So you're looking at jasmine, you're looking at heather flowers, things like that are going to be good for that. So for jasmine, we have abundance, sensuality, sexuality, relaxation, and joy. And once again, ruled by water Venus. And then the last two I want to talk about are not going to be ruled by water Venus. The first one is a marigold, which is a calendula. And once again, it's an annual. You're once again looking at the death and rebirth situation, unless you're working with the ones that aren't. So there's two types of marigold. One of them is an annual, one of them is not. So death and rebirth. Also, it has all of that sun energy. It's a flower that does really well in the sun. All of these flowers that bloom in the summertime are going to work really well in your solar plexus. This is kind of tapping in to the strength of who you are in the summer. So if you want to do work for, I want to stand in my own power. I want to be able to be noticed, not because I'm being flashy, but because of who I am. I want to be accepted because of who I am. All of those things, you can use any kind of summer blooming flower to help you with that. So any kind of sunflower or a marigold is going to be great for that. So you're going to have death and rebirth, happiness, success, and vitality. All of these are energies that are brought to us by the sun. So this is why they're going to carry that through. And so the correspondence for that flower is fire sun, obviously, because it is a summer blooming flower. The other one that I want to, and so think about also sunflowers are exactly the same way. They're an annual. They bloom in the summer, and that is, once again, you're looking at that sun energy that you're working with. So it's going to work really hard in the solar plexus. It's going to work really hard with your self-confidence, a sense of self, being able to stand in your power. These are all the things that it does. And so last but not least, because I know I'm pushing my time, I keep looking at that, I'm pushing my time. Last but not least, I wanted to talk to you guys about hibiscus is another one, right? And hibiscus, think about what hibiscus, there's a reason why hibiscus is used in wedding celebrations, right? If you have a hibiscus plant, I have 2 of them, and sometimes they really don't do that great for me. They basically are going to be, they have very specific temperature conditions. They can't be in a place that's too cold, and they also can't be in a place that's too hot because they will burn. And the flowers only bloom for like a day. They bloom and then boom, that's it. After a day, they already start wilting after that. So it's all about, traditionally use hibiscus in marriage ceremonies, all about making that day, the wedding day, as special as possible, or making the wedding night as special as possible. It's looked upon as an aphrodisiac because why? Because it's fleeting, right? So you want to make sure that that day is extra special. That wedding night is extra special, and you can use the energy of hibiscus in order to do that. So if you have a big date night that you're planning for, hibiscus is great. If you want to make sure it goes really well, hibiscus is fantastic in that. Or if you're going on a first date, right? If you want to make a good impression and you say, I want to make sure that this first date goes really, really well, hibiscus is a great option because it's going to put its best face on that whole day. And after that day, it's going to kind of bloom. So you would use other flowers after that. But for making a good impression, for flirting, for glamour, for marriage, for attraction of all kinds, this is one of the things that hibiscus does. And then think about the taste of hibiscus, right? It's kind of a sweeter tasting tea that you can have with that. So once again, you can use hibiscus if you are going through a difficult patch in your marriage or your relationship that you're fighting a lot. Maybe use hibiscus to bring some peace and calm into that arena. So hibiscus is going to be associated with freedom, harmony, relaxation, independence, passion, and romance, and sex, obviously, because once again, for that moment. And so it's ruled by fire and then Venus, Mars. So it's a lot of energy that's going to be there, hence that fire, for a very short period of time. It's going to be very bursty, just like every fire is. So keep that in mind when you're working with it. So I went way over and I apologize, guys, but it was good. We had lots of questions today. I really like that. So tomorrow, keep in mind, if you go to the Raven Moon Emporium Instagram, we are going to be doing a live that's going to be talking about how to work with flowers and possibly even combine flowers with different crystals to be able to have that combination and add a little bit of extra power to your work. So that is all I have for you today. Just a quick FYI, next Monday, there will not be a Witches In because I will be out of town. So I will see you all in 2 weeks. All right, guys, take care. Thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.